Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two terrific poets with us today, D.A. Powell and Elena Karina Byrne. I'm always happy when they return to the show. D.A. will read first and then Elena. Both poets have been very kind and generous to the Poetry Hour. We're thankful for them for that. D.A. Powell's books include Repast and Useless Landscape, or A Guide for Boys. A former Briggs Copeland lecturer at Harvard, Powell has taught for the last 19 years at University of San Francisco. Honors include the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Shelley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America, the 2019 John Updike Award, and fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and the NEA. He lives up in San Francisco. Here's a brilliant poet, D.A. Powell.
Thank you so much, Harry. And thanks to Jennifer, who is doing all of the wonderful work behind the scenes. And it's great to get to read with Elena again. This is such a thrill. So thank you, Harry, for bringing poetry right into people's living rooms and bus rides and wherever they happen to be. I think it's a wonderful idea to have poetry so portable and so available. So I appreciate you inviting me. I'm going to read mostly work from the past couple of years. Couple, in my case, could be 6. I don't know. One thing that I do as I write, I forget how much time has passed between each poem. Recently, I have been writing about San Francisco at the direction of the good folks at Zizaba magazine. They're putting together an anthology of poems that show San Francisco in a positive light. And I haven't quite gotten there yet. I keep trying, but I tend to be writing right now about things that are no longer here, which for me is a positive thing, I guess, but not quite what they have in mind. This first poem is called Snow White's My Bloody Valentine. It's a tribute to a group of low-budget actors who would put on these shows right around the corner from the Eagle Bar back in the 80s. Snow White's My Bloody Valentine was my first introduction to the sick and twisted players who put on low-budget theatrical slashers based on smarmy TV shows. Partridge Family, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw, 90210. In an industrial garage behind the leather biker bar on Harrison, near the Central Freeway overpass. Snow was a drag queen. The queen was trans. The animals of the forest were plush puppets from Community Thrift, including a spider, an octopus, a raccoon, and Alf. The point is, nothing was spared. Everybody was slaughtered, as happens so often in the queer community, and copious blood, feared for its possible infectiousness, was everywhere. Oh, I miss the sick and twisted universe, the makeshift threadbare costumes and cardboard set pieces. We are doing it all ourselves, said Tony vaguely, artistic director. We have no corporate donors. A little piece of the roof fell off. Dopey and Doc made out. Snow was falling to pieces. Someday her prince would come, probably during the beer bust next door. So that was sort of a tribute to, some of the artistic life of San Francisco that has gone away. And this poem is about the transformations of the Castro neighborhood, which used to be a bevy of gay bars. And now it's more like a museum to the heady days of gay liberation. The poem doesn't have a title. It starts with an epigraph from poet Jack Spicer. Ghosts are no shrewd people. History begins with shrewd people and ends with ghosts. Francine's lasted only just over a year in the heart of the Castro, in the heart of the 80s. Kelly Marie pumping over the sound system. It feels like I'm in love. And when it fell off into the annals of history, Francine's became The Edge. The Pendulum became Toad Hall, a tribute to an earlier bar. The Elephant Walk became Harvey's, a tribute to a dead supervisor. The Headquarters became a hardware store. The Bear became Daddy's. And the Jackhammer just quit like a vibrator with dead batteries. Meanwhile, Wild Side West on the other side of town stayed on into the present, and gay and lesbian and trans became household words, famous brands. The bulk of the rest of what I'm going to read is, I guess I live in this world of popular culture. Especially during the pandemic, I started watching a lot more old movies and a lot more old television. One of the game show networks started showing old episodes of To Tell the Truth and What's My Line. So this poem is sort of a tribute to those game shows where they would have the commercials right in the middle of the game show. This is called A Word from Our Sponsors. So each of the sponsors gets a word, one word. A word from our sponsors. Oneida says silver. Seriton says regular. Geritol says liver. Sprint says cellular. Orida says buttered. Miss Clairol says splendor. Bufferin says buffered. Marlboro Lights says filtered. Sony says remote. Stop at says poof. Old Gold says smoke. Ford Fiesta says moonroof. Frigidaire says defrost. Amelia Earhart Luggage says lost. Oh, I forgot to warn you, it was a sonnet. A sonnet made out of words from our sponsors. So you can kind of tell what things I watched when I was a kid and what things I still go back and find some inspiration in. This poem is inspired by the very first primetime cartoon show, The Flintstones. And it's called Are You There, God? It's Me and Marg Rock. Mr. Slate, Mr. Rubble, and a certain Mr. Flintstone walk into a Hanna-Barbera cartoon in their hard hats, hard rock playing, pterodactyls swaying. And there goes Stony Curtis to the roulette wheel run by a Dino. It's casino night at the Rockadero, and Mick Jagged and the Stones are singing, "You Can't Always Speak, So You Grunt." With his gravelly voice, Flintstone orders just rocks on the rocks. Rubble has a double anything but neat. Martini dry and up for Slate. Everyone's a fossil here, his boss will complain, but Fred has such primitive needs. A rack of ribs big enough to tip his auto over. A woman who goes to bed with bones in her hair instead of curlers, and for nibbles. Someone to curl up with on the mammoth rug on the floor of their cave. It's a trog world out there. Fred strikes a flint and is a god of fire. Somewhere in bedrock, Anne Margrock is thinking of this man's club, his humongous feet, and the hunger of the saber tooth. If only she could go back in time, before her star rose above the tar pits, before petroleum killed them all. Pebbles, Bam Bam, the Flintstones, the Rubbles. This one is inspired by the character of Catwoman on the 1960s television show Batman. And this is actually the third Catwoman. Remember, there was Lee Merriweather, Julie Newmar, and this one I imagine in the voice of Catwoman number 3, Eartha Kitt. She is negotiating her contract for playing Catwoman, and it's called Catwoman's Clause. Clause in the legal sense. Rider number 7, cool milk, not cold, not warm, served in a non-reactive dish like porcelain or glass. No tin, no coppers, and not too much butterfat. I'm watching my hips and haunches. No leopards on the set, no pumas, no jags. I want house pussies, no wild flea bags from the veldt, and only real fur for my bottom. No felt. No dogs allowed, of course. No laser pointers. I'm tired of all that. No toys, unless they're floppy fish that shimmer in the moonlight. No catfish. I hate the idea of whiskers on a koi. I want the pond, but not the wet of it. This pelt stays dry unless I lick it myself. C-section on petting, static electricity, and rubbing the wrong way. I can't be collared or dressed in a hat nor vest. I must remain cat. I must be wondered at like a golden sphinx, a leap into the empress's lap. A royal family member to whom is paid such deference. Be quiet while I nap. One of the things I do all the time is when I'm teaching, I have students write in class. I give them writing prompts, and then I do them myself just to prove that, it's not busy work. We can all write a poem in 20 minutes if we need to. And so this past semester, the prompts were all disco songs. And I wrote along with the students, I would say, of the 13 or 14 assignments, I came out with 3 things that maybe are poems. This one was inspired by the Cheryl Lynn song, To Be Real. And it's called To Be Real. Pinocchio wanted to be a boy instead of a toy, so he tried cigars, hooch, and God knows what else. He took a drag from a fag and let it out. His head spun like it did on the lathe. He tried on clothes that made him look femme. He tried on clothes that made him look him. He whittled his twig down to a knot, and every time he tried to be something he was not, that nose of his grew sharp and pointy. He got a sliver in his finger from picking at himself. He grew balls, a sack, a wiener made of wood, but he was still not convinced he was a member of the humankind. He wished upon a star. Would the star make him real? Crickets. I also, during the first year of lockdown, spent a lot of time watching the old Tarzan movies, particularly the movies that Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan did together. Harry, you've heard this poem before, but I'm going to bring it again. This poem is about Cheetah, their ape companion, Tarzan and Jane's ape companion. And this is a poem that explores what happened to Cheetah after the movies. Cheetah after. He was a changed chimp after what Hollywood put him through. Retired to Palm Springs and opened a home for apes abused by show business, circuses, space programs, commercials, and the like. He took up painting, played golf, and never gave up smoking. They gave him a star in the desert on the Walk of Fame, such as it is in Palm Springs. In cement, Hollywood was fickle, and the mammal du jour was Flipper, or a killer whale known as Free Willy, and all the damn dogs, Rin Tin Tin, Wonton Ton, Lassie, Benji, Cujo, Tiger, and that hee-haw hound named Blue. Cheetah was blue. Cheetah felt cheated. All that he knew was how to run away from lions, ride the backs of zebras, swing from the Silver Springs trapezes above the lagoon, and ride an elephant triumphantly, which frankly is a lot. He hurled himself into his art, some of which you'll find at cheetahthechimp.org. Only Jane Goodall, of all the Janes in his life, remained his friend. And what of that man who once said, "Cheetah, friend," and thumped his chest like a silverback ape? He never writes Cheetah back, not even a holler. Did I see recently that Jane Goodall just turned 90 or 93 or something like that? I'm glad she's still amongst us. This poem follows the fate of, if you watched those old Tarzan movies, you know that because of the way the Hollywood code was constructed, the morality code, Tarzan and Jane were considered unmarried. So they couldn't exactly have a child together. So they had to find a child in the jungle, just the way the two of them had been found in the jungle. This is called Boy Grows Up. Oh, their child was named Boy. Sorry, I say that in the first lines of the poem. Boy grows up. Tarzan and Jane have a boy. His name is Boy. He runs away from the jungle with his elephant and chimp. He hopes to buy a plane like the one they found him in the night he fell from the sky, like the child of a Greek god tossed off of Olympus. Civilization dumped him, yet he no longer longs to be let back in. And when they do let him, why, it's just the circus tent for him. He runs away again. Away he runs. Boy on the waves, boy on the rails, boy tucking tips in his underwear, which he only wears to work. When will he be free again? After 10, says Boy. Boy gone wild, gone long in the tooth, but all boy, this boy called Boy. As you'll see in the sequel, Boy on the Sunset Strip. Because we had a eclipse yesterday, I thought I would write a poem that I wrote during the last total solar eclipse, when I was actually in the path of totality. This time around, it was just a dim day. But When Totality Occurs is the title of this poem. On another exoplanet, would it feel the same, this interval of opacity and concealment, dip in temperature, surge of power, as the lights are triggered by their sensors, the ones that say that it is dark out? What other place in the heavens can seem so empty as the one over which the shadow of the moon passes? Crickets startled, bats confused. The voices of the birds have been arrested. No, you can't go out. This is not a good time. You'll get hit by a car without its headlamps on. The idiots are still with us. That's the bloody terror of it. For what might they do to us while the lights are off and we're staring at the sun, rather staring at the place it last was seen, until it comes again to shame us with its brilliance? I'm going to close with a poem that I wrote during the last great rainstorm. And I was sitting there cursing the rain, which in California you really shouldn't do, because, you know, rain can be withheld for an entire decade. So when we have it, we should think of all the reasons why we love rain and why we need it. This is called As for What the Rain Can Do. Wash me in blossoms yet to come. Lift my boat. Flood the rice fields where the egret lands. Complex math. Rinse off a bench. Turn on a dime. Give you something to think about. Feed an aspiring stream. Tell you by thunder it's coming. Stand you up. Play a little music on the rooftop. Get a body good and wet. Open the golden tulips. Mix us a drink. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much, DA. I always love your poetry. There's so much enjoyment in it, and it's always clear and accessible. It's also inventive, and yet it's familiar. You know, whether you're talking about the changes that happened in the Castro district, or, you know, the Tarzan and Jane movies way back, maybe even pre-code, and then the commercials. And, you know, in the last poem you read about the rain, as for what the rain can do, you know, you have a couple of phrases there, rinse off a bench and play a little music on top of the roof. And that's what your music does to it, or that's what your poetry does to us too. You wash it off and you give a new vision. And there's always an affirmation, and it always seems so simple. And in many ways, you just demystify poetry, because sometimes poetry is hard for some people because it, you know, trying to all the metaphors and all that. And you just are so clear-eyed. And so you're just a wonderful poet. I'm always appreciative of the work that you do. It's really a wonder. You know, it just seems so effortlessly done. Could you take like one of your poems, like say the one on commercials? Mm-hmm. Do you make a list, or do you just write them straight through? Do you refine your poems, or how do you do that?
Well, that poem, you know, it started as a list and quickly became sort of a rhymed list. So then I started thinking about, you know, where does it end? How long do I go on for this? And then I came up with the idea of turning it into a Shakespearean sonnet. And then it just seemed like, you know, I remembered all of the crazy things that they gave away on game shows as prizes. And Amelia Earhart luggage was always the one that I was just like, you know, who's going to trust Amelia Earhart luggage? So I had to end there. Yeah.
Well, after you, Amelia Earhart luggage, you said lost, and like old gold smoke. So the you know, the pairing up of the commercials and then the end result, so to speak.
Yeah. And many of them, you know, hinged like Bufferin. Their key word in their commercials was buffered. You know, we're better than the other aspirins because we've got this buffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's always a wonderful pleasure. DA.
Thanks so much, Harry. Thank you.
You know, you live in your landscape, and you mentioned you wrote about popular culture and the human being living in the city. And I love San Francisco. Thank you once again for a wonderful reading, D.A. Powell.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing Elena.
Former regional director of the Poetry Society of America, a final judge for the Penn's Best of the West Award, the Kate and Kingsley Tufts Poetry Awards, and the International Laurel Prize in 2022. Elena Karina Byrne works as a freelance editor, professor, and programming consultant, and poetry stage manager for the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books. Her 5 poetry collections include If This Makes You Nervous, Omnidon Publishing, 2021, Best American Poetry, Pushcart Prize recipient. Elena's work also appears in Poetry, the Paris Review, Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, Plume, Anthologies, LARB, Real Verse, Poems About the Movies, New American Writing, Bomb, and elsewhere. Elena is writing screenplays while completing an essay collection entitled Warrior Hour. Here's a marvelous poet, Elena Karina Byrne.
Thank you, Harry. Gosh. And thank you to Harry's Hour audience that I see on here. What a delight. And thank you, DA. I'm wholly inspired now because I watched the same programs that you did. Definitely the Flintstones and Flipper are included in that list, but all of them. And it's such an interesting cultural shift when you go back and look at those now. So that inspired me. But unlike DA, I'm going to read all new poems. And the first one has a line from Kandinsky, which actually inspired the poem. His line is, "The circle is the synthesis of the greatest oppositions." And this is a true story. The title is by Leonardo da Vinci. Truth was the only daughter of time She once walked the earth without clothes, but her skin was occupied. It was a New York City spring turning the corner away from love. A department store interior, not unlike the Guggenheim circles. That is, if my long memory opened the right door where I could see down its center spiral of floors, leading to the bottom inside pit of a partial potted garden, its controlled fountain ripple, restaurant round tables, and shoppers talking while they ate. It was the kind of concussed day Kandinsky would abstract, for the circle is the synthesis of the greatest oppositions, because the truth is I was unhappy, why I went shopping in the first place. The seconds hovered like orchard flies around my head, too long for me to see the body in a black suit that had just fallen from a great height. A dead man askew as a bad joke at his own funeral, now face down in the manufactured water. No one expects their life to be interrupted, yanked from the one of time's branches like a hard fruit. When you can't see, least of all, see yourself undressing in front of a bottomless mirror that promises someone else, just not you, please, today, just not you. Yeah, that was pretty horrifying, as you can imagine. The next poem has a title by John Wall-Barger, a new friend who wrote this marvelous essay book called The Elephant of Silence. It's about poetry and cinema. So there they were, the game of God on the name of each gun in the desert stillness. Help us. Because I'm already there, 14 years old, full speed running out the length of hot white sand with a message for the other young men, the Aegean behind us. It's director Peter Weir's 1915 World War I. It's 1981, where I'm trapped beneath a 14-foot screen inside a room made for weeping. So there they were, under Gallipoli's drowning blue aqua, as if from some cathedral's eye socket, and there they became naked, swimming in slow motion just before the rise of air bubbles and fall of the black shrapnel as shore bombs hit and hit, rendering a pressured vacuum absence held in by fear, crushing the inner ear dark before the next waves, torn sleeves, retrieve them up for air. As a viewer, I recognize the dead setup and their establishing film shot crossing my face. That's how I knew they were doomed, because I've been there before, seen the life I knew leave for good. It's familiar, a child playing in the street, familial as a wind tunnel, and it springs from the same scene where the watcher is being watched, from the violence of the past, with the same delayed instincts of music that drifts into your bedroom window from a great distance. This emotional frame for what will come, what man does to another man, shrift from the adrenaline dream and thrown straight back into the kissed confession of it. When death announces the longest day of the year is now. What makes for film's predetermining time obsolete as the future seen adrift on an ice floe, so that when the ice absorbs the light, there they are again, taken from the red end of the bone spectrum, allowing only blue light to pass through. That movie Gallipoli really hit me hard because I was a sprinter. And so I don't know if you know the story, but it's about the sprinters that are trying to get the messages, and they're in the ditches. They're about to die. It's pretty intense. My reading will get less intense. This next poem is titled by Da Shiji. Oh, I've got someone's image on the front. It is so much better when it's you telling the story. Some salt of our youth still in us, Another year's whalebone blunder on shore, the yes of the no of the yes. We look for a sleepless dance in a squall. But Vivi Francis reminds me, you're not looking hard enough. Enough of my tale of two children with one of us left holding a bottle in a paper bag and the other a self-harm gun. The fear we'd be found out, even at that age, for who we really are. Fear like an anchor, weightless, falling inside of you. No seafloor end in sight. Can you still find the thoroughfare light once bent toward its bullseye, light's farewell party applause in the trees? The last time we saw my sister, night came knocking on the wood door to be let in with a policeman, like a death ballad that began in an owl's voice, B flat, then bearing the kind of silence that only a family share, like grammar's misnomers as you're trying so hard not to grieve, or like the Pacific Ocean when she pleads at the edge of her mouths, too early, too late. Imagine a glutinous political monster wearing gloves pulls a dead animal out of a hat and claims they're both free as he hears applause coming from this country's greasy kitchen fire. You don't have to imagine because he's real. The child in me wants to run, the adult wants to speak out, but I can't find my sea legs or the sound of the water's real voice, no matter. Between black and white rain, he'll still claim no one saw any of it happen. This next poem is a noir ars poetica, and I think I saw Suzanne Lummis in the audience, so this is for her. It's called I Don't Make the Rules, a noir ars poetica. When dusk makes a break for it alone and a lie has been told to you so many times, you forget your own name. And a man appears in a tuxedo, opens the glass door to say, welcome, welcome, without smiling. As he looks over your shoulder, I turn around to look too, since this is a motel and not a restaurant. The parking lot's almost as empty as my exhaustion, so I decide to stay and say nothing in case he has a gun and a mind made for all-nighters. I say this to you because the floor smells like old beer and grief. Once he hands me my door card key, I see a rat make himself at home behind the candy dispenser down the hall. Now I wonder what lives behind the ice machine that lights up at night like one blue eye of hell as you lift open its tiny kiln-like door before reaching in with that small shovel tied to its black watch chain. I will anticipate the smell of cigarette smoke coming from the bathroom vent in the next room, just after a couple has turned their sprung bed into a comedy store of errors between their marriages. This makes it easy to invade their space, raising the volume on the TV. After all, I'll find nothing worth watching but for a Dungeons and Dragons cop show, where the villain is an orphan girl who gets bloodied but free in one fell swoop, yet not without the cliche of falling in love with the wrong side of the bed. This next poem was inspired by this quote from Carlo Rovelli, the theoretical physicist. I love him. One of his books is called 7 Brief Lessons on Physics. Nothing but a jump from one interaction to another. We can now observe black holes formed by collapsed stars. Crushed by its own weight, the matter of these stars has collapsed upon itself and disappears from our view. Collapsing ghosts. The year's crowded train hurtled on like a spine pulled from the flesh of a fish, like a Doppler field implosion. Someone's hate words enter your skin layers at the neutral syllable speed of a black holed God who is unseen. Fit to be tied behind the back of feeling a hatchet to the lock and heat of what we admit. I began to feel nothing, underwater, crushed by marriage's lightless vacuum. exploring all limits, 66 seabed meters from body to the beds near oxygen toxicity. I gave myself what I wanted him to give me. Isn't that the jump from one nitrogen interaction to another? The matter of collapsing into ourselves and seen from a shining distance? Those who are afraid fight hardest, make a pact with the ruined claims on time. The way gravity doesn't exist in space, it is space. Between my eyes, before I could speak my peace entreaty, to be simply loved and loved again, like an erotic tide's heave returning to its demise, only to be repeated, but different, as the face of a star splintered inside the wave's white beard, up there, airborne. And yet without air. Let me be clear. I don't think as far as you can drown me, can't measure what my parents said to each other in the disappearing hour after faith in the unknown died. Yet, when electrons no longer get in the way, you are free to travel alone. Oh, holy failed ghost, praying to yourself inside the dark applause made with one hand, maybe waving for help from the ledge of the light's lasting tour waveform. Across this universe, clatter and cluster of bang, bang, kiss, kiss. Okay, let's see if I can do this next one. It's a rant, and it's filled with idioms that will be familiar to you. And the title is Baudelaire, Love Should Be Love. Let me put it up here on the screen. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. Let's see if I can do this. Love should be love, if not the silence-bound sex dance and fearless first blood act of being human, then what? Making two ends meet, the long walk on hummingbird, eggshells, canary soul looking for her cage, that pretty penny through thick and thin to get him till I'm a piece of cake task, blue in the face. Never calling it a day, if cock and bother, foul and tipsy there, where the half-black moon's head hails Greenland's ice sheets, soon leaving, and what has me forever saying, waving hello, forever upside down in a flower weave, inside a green alarm of fronds, so incoherent for some insolent of clear sky. To understand what it is I don't want when I'm wanting more than I'm capable to name, the cost of arm and leg, an arm and a leg, worth its weight in gold, if not under one ember pool of constellations to drown in, then our letters paper trail to fill the pillow, every pepper floored, brain grounds, cane, alphabet, and Sanskrit's meaning to say, in a nutshell, love, while being saturated with forethought and afterthought for the closed-in spaces between our two bodies staring back into the empire of years made by new memories. Yet, love should be love, underestimated, snowed under, and out of bounds while you scream beneath the deepest thicket of trees where one forgets what it's like to see eye to eye, that love weighs more than language's inconsolable need to land in a body with whom you have shared breathing. If not arable love, then what other warm pitfall and stumble into this present tense solace of light coming in from the very last Latin empire in the kitchen are we? Ask, and I'll be your truth behind every lie, the bare bones, stoned river moving downstream, so we might get out of hand like two peas in a pod on top of the world's whole 9 yards, to know which way our thought wind blows as we catch blue flies with honey. It's like riding a bicycle to get to this body show on the road when you have your head in the clouds and can't make an omelet without breaking some brown eggs at the corner of the sun that goes down in flames every night. And then that's when we jump from the frying pan into the bonfire, adding skin fuel to heat for a method to one's madness in love, bouncing off the walls with joy, the kind that throws all caution to the westerlies winds that follow their own wild goose chase over burning bridges going down in flames to get you to the other side, where this wet bed of grass is greener than a lover's blessing in disguise or final rise to the hour's occasion. What love is not better than never, timed to make a long onboard story short, as taking two to tango on the ocean's bottom floor, two guided by cephalopod psychedelic colors that mimic this universe and its bolt from the blue where no planet compares its apples to another's oranges. Please know the best of both rasp worlds will wrap your two heads around each other's joy and fear, making ends meet where the animate devils in the lemon peel sweet unsaid details. Thank you. Whew, got through that. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Elena, for such a wondrous reading. It's like enhanced energy delight, and you just are so erudite, and you just have such a great sense of, some of the themes were, love and freedom and connectedness from the inner and the outer, and it's just an unraveling, and it's just really amazing, how you do all this. It's so imaginative and it's so lovely. Could you just take us through, like, the last poem about, love should be love? And just, I don't know if you want to even talk about the origin of that poem, but, what evoked you to write the poem? And it seemed to me there's so much compressed feelings and so many feelings in there, and yet you transform them into such a marvelous poem. Could you just let us in a little bit about how that poem was made and how you wrote it?
Yeah, a lot of, the earlier poems, there were several of them that were, well, the one about the department store, and I don't know if I've been trying to write more about real life memories and things like that. But this, like so many, if you guys know my work, then I'm quote addicted. So the quote, when I saw it, I thought, oh God, it's so simple, but it immediately triggered, sort of a kind of that tumbling feeling of wanting to. I love rants. I wanted to write a rant. So, and it looks like this on the page, and it's 2 pages like that. But I thought, well, I wanted it to be playful too. So I thought, well, why not just so I wrote down as many idioms as I could find, through thick and thin, anything that I'm sure you picked them up along the way. And occasionally I would add, yeah, what you did?
Eye to eye was one of the ones
Oh yeah, there's actually many in here, and occasionally I would add an adjective. But Harry, one of the things that I believe sometimes when we're writing a poem and we're not entirely sure what's going to happen with the subject, I believe that the language really moves us toward that subject, and it kept moving me forward. So once I hit the Greenland ice sheets, and then I was thinking about nature, and so then a lot of nature came into play, and such is such. So but the devil in the details, that was one thing I knew I wanted wanted to end with. So yeah, that's about it. But with the other poems, Harry, I think this relates too. I like to pick a subject like the Gallipoli film or like astrophysics, and use that as the vehicle. Like it's a car you climb into. Use that as the vehicle to talk about my failed marriage or whatever else the subject is. So it makes it fun. It makes it
It's not objective what do you call it? Objective.
Relative. Yeah. It's
something out there, but it's more complex than it. And you don't get hung up in, I mean, you can, it's evident that there's an emotional charge, but you don't get all hung up in that. You take us on a journey, which I love. You're just such a wonderful, imaginative poet, and you just have so much knowledge that I'm so grateful for. We have a few minutes left. Why don't each one of you, starting with Elena, since you just finished, say something about DA's work, and then DA about your work. You people are both just so knowledgeable. And Elena?
Yeah, so I'm so delighted to read with you again. And you mentioned, Harry, you used the word simplicity, and of course, it is one of the most difficult things that a poet can do, is to write a simple poem that is also, incredibly powerful. And, it's that Sylvia Plath quote that it's like a closed fist that excludes and stuns. But what I love about your work, Harry, is that you also, now that I'm writing screenplays, for me, they're like, I really follow the sort of the cinematic moment. I feel like I've entered into the scene that you're describing, even though sometimes you're, and because it's all an act of translation, we're translating those experiences, more personally, but it just, isn't that what we want? We want to be taken to other places because in order to express some of the same emotions that we all share. I think that's what it's about. Did I talk too much?
No, not at all. I love hearing you talk, and I love your poems. And something that you said about process, about how when you are writing the poem, it sort of finds its language. It accretes these words that then, I feel like your poems act like tumbleweeds. They sort of gather up energy and gather up all the other little lost bits and sort of turn them into this big cohesive unit. And I love just being sort of blown away by your language, by the beauty of it and the mystery of it and the energy of it. You have so much great energy in your poems.
Yeah, I mean, don't you feel like, as a writer, don't you feel like that somehow some of our temperament gets put on the page a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking of how Hopkins talks about, when you read a Shakespeare poem and you think, well, if I were Shakespeare, I could write that. But it's not just that, it's like there's something else which happens, which is you have to be Shakespeare surprising himself. You have to be whoever that other writer is in the moment of discovery. You can't just say, well, I would know all of these things in advance, because if we just write what we know, that's not very interesting. But if we're discovering as we're writing, it's profound.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's physiological. The brain and the body work together, I believe, with all the arts, really. The brain and the body have to be speaking to one another in some way. So, it's a whole experience. And hopefully it's a whole experience for the readers as well.
Also, in terms of what you just said, when the body and mind are together, going back to Swedenborg and then through Blake, there's a transformation. And so that lifts us up too. And you two are just so fabulous. I just love listening to both of you. And so I'm going to make an announcement for our next Tuesday's reading. Next Tuesday, April 16th, we have Just in Time by Paul Vangelisi, a jazz and poetry performance featuring Paul Vangelisi, vocalist Polly Geller, and the Robin's Nest Quartet. This is a digital recording of a live performance in the MPTF Country House Lounge on January 10, 2024. So those of you who like spoken word and music together, poetry and jazz, it's a fabulous 1 hour. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just want to say once again that it's always such a pleasure and such an honor when D.A. Powell and Elena Karina Byrne bless us with their poetry and their conversation. You know, I learn from them. And, you know, D.A. mentioned discovery. You know, troubadour poet, the origin, trobar, means to discover. And so we keep on going and we keep the poetry alive. So thank you once again for such a fabulous reading, D.A. Powell and Elena Karina Byrne.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we see you guys back here very, very soon.
Always happy to do it. Always happy to do it. This is such a pleasure. Harry, you're such a great host. And you make it easy.
What's that old, you know, Michael Lally has a title for a book, It Takes One to Know One.